And by the way, while I'm doing the alarm, oh, I got that down. Let me talk to you real quick about the second battery. Here's what I did, and here's the reason why. First of all, if you're going to run the battery any more than a few feet from your standard battery, or your standard power coming in or out of it, you want to make sure you fuse it at both sides of the line, as close to the battery as possible. Because if the line shorts out on either end, you want to make sure the fuses blow. If I have it here, for instance, a fuse, where I have this breaker, which is like a fuse, and this battery cable went all the way to the rear of the vehicle and up underneath someplace in a box, and it shorted out back there, well, it'll pop this, but at the same token, this whole line going back to there is still hot. And if it's shorted out, it's going to continue to short and start a fire. So I want a fuse back there as well as here. Yeah. Now, if you're going to have it on the inside of the vehicle, then you're going to want it in a metal box, because the plastic battery boxes are not going to do diddly crap if it shorts out or the battery blows up. So you want a good, strong metal box. I would prefer to have had it underneath, but it's just harder for me to get up under there now to check it periodically, because you do have to check it periodically. I mean, you got to put it in a good box. You got to have it in a good metal box, or at least a metal bottom, so that the battery doesn't get whacked with something. But it has to be enclosed. Not so much a top on it, unless you got it so close to the frame. But other than that, I would take it down periodically, every 6-7 months before the winter, and then after the winter, just to make sure that the battery's still good, the connections are still good, and so on and so forth. Well, for me to do that and have to crawl up underneath there now, I'm just getting too old for this crap. So I just stuck it in behind here because, well, not behind here, but in the back, under the rear seat, and I'll show you in a minute, so that I don't have to do all that. So this is here. Now they make automatics, and they're kind of diode switching. So if it sees a drain, it'll shut it down. If it doesn't, it'll charge it up, all that kind of crap. I like a little bit of manual. If the short's out, this is going to pop and push it down. That disconnects the back battery. So now the back battery and the stock battery are not connected. If I need it, now that battery will stay charged for almost ever, but every now and then I'll kick it on. But if I need to use that back battery because I ran the front battery dead, I just have to flip that up, and now I have both batteries for starting. If I run it, both batteries will charge. See, the alternator is going to continue to charge regardless, or spin. So as long as it's spinning, it must have charged two batteries. So like I say, if there's a short, or I want to disconnect the rear battery, push the button in. If there's a short, it'll do it by itself. The lever comes down, battery's disconnected. If I need that battery, flip it up. All right, that's basically it. And away I go. Now, this goes all the way to the back battery. This one goes all the way over underneath the carpet and everything inside, over to a fuse over there. So it's fused over there, and it's got the breaker over here. So if that wire that runs from point A to point B shorts out, it'll blow the fuse and snap the breaker. Now the wire going from this box, or this switch, this relay, this is I think this is more than I needed. I think this is a 300, but that's all I had. This is a Blue Sea, and it's a good brand. It's dependable. You can get 80s, you can get 100s, you can get 200s, 300s. It's either a 100 or a 300, I don't remember. But meanwhile, the wire going from here to that rear battery, back under the seat, that I'll show you in a minute, there's no fuse back there yet. I have to put a fuse back there. Let me show you. I'll take you over here. Well, I wanted to take you over here anyway. But as you can see, underneath there's a metal battery box that I welded together, and there's a battery in there. And the battery that's in there is, I forgot what the model number was, but it was like out of a Mercedes or something. It's a heavy-duty battery. It's a battery that made for these cars that have every bells and whistles in them. So it's got a lot of amp hours. I don't care about crank. I want amp hours. The more amp hours the battery has, the longer it's going to last when you're running it without charging. All right? And amp hours, it's going to start. You know, that's all there is to it. So, but I got to put a fuse where the wire connects to that battery. So this way, if the wire that's buried under this carpet shorts out, it'll pop that breaker. But I need it to pop the fuse of this battery, so it'll disconnect that battery. So you'll want to fuse it on both ends. And you want to use a monster fuse or a breaker or something like that. You don't want to use a little 30 amp blade fuse, because that's not going to give you the amps that you need and the size wire that you need. They have those big monster fuses that you can plug in. I've got some in there. I can show you what I'm talking about when I go in. Alright, anyway, let me get back over there and see what we're doing with this alarm system. I'm in here waiting for the sun to get out of my face. I'll show you what I'm talking about. You really don't want to use a small fuse like one of these fuses. Now this is a breaker, 80 amps, no fuses, and it works just like the box. However, the wires are put in through the end, and the set screw holds it in place. Nothing really wrong with it, but I like to have the terminal lugs. So you want the square one, so I'm not using little Allen screws to hold the wire. But that's that. Then they have these kind of fuses, which take these big ass fuses. And you can get these 60, 80. I think I got 40s, 60s, and 80s. I don't even know what this one is. Yeah. Alright. So depending, you know, if I was going to run this on a battery, it would be an 80. And this is probably the one I'm going to run. This with this fuse. Now the other is these little monster, these little monster fuses. Alright. Now this one is also an 80 amp. And this takes, put this one back here for now. This one takes, come on, there we go. This kind of a fuse holder, which is nice. Boom, boom. And you bring your main in, which would be a number 4. Now you could probably get away with number 8 if you're running short distance. And then you can come out with your 2 8s or 10s. So this can be 1 circuit in, 2 circuits out. But that takes that large blade fuse. And it pops in just like a regular fuse. Okay. That's a 50 amp, but I got the 80s and so on. So it all depends on where it's going to be, you know, and such. And then they have your grounding blocks that you're not going to use, just ground it to the chassis. You want your ground to be at least the same size, if bigger is okay, but you want it short. Shorter the better when it comes to ground. You don't have to run your battery positive and negative. You just got to run the positive side and ground off the back. And don't worry about it. Like I say, same size, if not a little heavier. But don't go nuts. That's not going to make too much of a difference. You just don't want to go smaller, because the ground has to get out as fast as the power's coming in. If not, you're going to have a problem. So you want it the same. And you want it short. All right? Not so short that it's a pain in the ass to work with, but short. You know? So that's kind of how that works. Let me put this back up here. And like I say, because it's going to be inside the van, I really don't need waterproof, but I'll probably run one of those because the fuse is sealed. It's encapsulated in the plastic holder, where on this one, the top of the fuse is open, so the two sides, the two top prongs of the fuse where the power is going through is also going to be open. So you'd have to kind of worry about that a little bit, you know. I mean, not enough to say you don't use it, but you know, you don't want to put it to where it's going to be possibly shorting out against something, metal plate or some sort. So that's that. So I'm going to take a little bit of break. I'm working on this radio, so while the sun is moving, it just has to move a little bit more to the northeast, and as it starts going up this way a little bit more, I will be able to get out there and work on that without the sun beating in my face.